Hello, it's me. I've got my crown on again. Hang on, let me just have to go that way. Anyway, I have been, if you haven't met me before, my name's Sunday. I'm got an agreement to do a daily live, and I did say that I would explore and explain staying sort of grounded in a world that's full of chaos. And if you've been following the news, reading, it can be quite overwhelming, quite disturbing. And so somebody said to me, you know, you seem really grounded, really solid, quite happy, you know, content, and how do you do that? And it got me thinking, and inside my body there's quite a cocktail of feelings that goes on. And then today I'm really present to myself as a starter. I don't know how you are in staying present to yourself in those moments when you feel disturbed inside. When I feel disturbed inside, when there's something wrong with the host, that hello, whoever's come on, that is an indicator for me to take notice, because what could come out of my mouth or the way that I choose to behave if I'm still in my unconsciousness is not how I want to be. In the past, I caused a lot of harm to myself and others. And that kind of leads me on to the next thing, is that over the years I've explored this concept of us all being connected, and connected not just to each other but to everything on the planet. And that's a huge, like for me, that was a huge concept to take on. And I can sense the truth in that. And in moments when people are behaving in ways that remind me of my old ways, or in ways that are so far removed from my experience, I can get into that judgment, into that disconnect, into that thinking there's an us and them going on. And yet in my heart of hearts, I know that isn't true. And the way that I really embodied the truth of that in a very practical way was that when I was witnessing somebody doing something that sounded and looked abhorrent or really unhuman, inhuman, not kind, you know, from that inhumanness to just basically unkindness and unconsidered way of being, which I hold my hand up, I was a very unconsidered person in a former life. I had no concept of how I was manifesting myself. I was so unaware of how I was doing Sunday, how I was moving my body in the world, how the things that I was speaking about, how I was treating other people, how I was treating myself. And so going back to that point of us being connected, you know, I realised that when I was experiencing people being outside of my comfort zone, my known realm, or my historical realm, as I've come to see it in later life, is that they're asleep, they're unconscious, they're doing what they know to do with the tools that they've got. And if they knew any different, they'd do different. You know, and that opened up a door of compassion, and I had to open the door of compassion to myself, because I had been one of those people that was like leaving a wake of disaster behind me with people going, because I just wasn't aware. So it really helped me to tune in to that part of me that I know now that when I do something that's inconsiderate, and I'm always doing that because I'm a human being, when I'm doing something that's inconsiderate, not only am I harming the other person, I'm also harming myself. I do it less and less now because I'm aware that if I take advantage of another person, I'm taking advantage of myself, because I pay. You know, I get it, that there's a level of consciousness and conscientiousness in me to know when I'm doing wrong, in inverted commas. When I say wrong, it means like it's not useful. It's not useful in that moment to respond or react in the way that I would have done without some self-awareness. So when there's temptation always along the way, I think money's probably the one that most people can grapple with. The temptation of money, the temptation of getting more money, or finding some money. You know, how many times have you found some money and you've pocketed it? I know I've done that, you know, found a tenner blowing around unattended, and I've just picked it up and pocketed it and kept it and spent it. And then there's other times, and maybe you've done this too, when you've openly stolen. Like if I was to think about the times when I steal something, and we're talking about practical things, but not also that energy, you know, like, and that takes huge awareness to realise that you're actually stealing somebody's energy. And the way that we do that is when we diss somebody else's agreement, or, you know, like idea or concept or their belief. We're stealing some energy from them. That's quite a deep way of looking at stealing. But when you look at the material level, the you know, you found something. I recently found a shirt that was somewhere and brought it home to Stephen, and then I've ended up giving it to charity. But is that stealing when you find something? I don't know. But it's when you take, I mean, I was a kid and stole sweets. So we've all got an experience of stealing something practical. Maybe you've taken money out of your mother's purse, or maybe, and oh, God forbid, that you put birthday cards inside the magazine that you buy at the supermarket. Yes, I've done that. So noticing what you steal. Now I know that I'm creating harm. There's some sort of diss in me, you know, and I'm sure that I still do it on an unconscious level at times, that I steal something. But when you look back in your life and you look to what you've stolen, we know when we get home there's a heaviness. There's that instant, oh, I got away with that, but then there's a heaviness to it. Like sometimes when your bill meal, when you've been out for a meal and your bill's wrong and you've kept quiet. You know, it's those little, when you know it's not, somebody's giving you too much change back and you look at it and you think, well, that's not right. It's in those moments when you don't speak up and tell the truth that we carry something away that's dishonouring to ourselves as well as the other person. So as much as I am on that conscious path, there's still times when I trip up, when my temptation gets the better of me. And then sometimes I have to go and clean it up and say, last year, last week, yesterday, I did this. It didn't feel right, so I'm come to apologise and undo it. You know, that takes huge amounts of courage. But once I've done that, I feel so much better. So in that sense, you know, I recognise that we're all connected. If I harm somebody else, either consciously or unconsciously, I pay. In terms of guilt, in terms of carrying a weight that where I've felt like I've done something that wasn't right. Where it gets a bit tricky is if you've got a real strong personality and feeling guilty for everything, because then, like, just for saying something that somebody got upset about, you can feel the guilt of that, and that is where it gets a little bit more problematic. So I've learned over the years that actually the way that I am, if I'm okay with the way that I am, and somebody takes offence to that, then if I can feel compassion for that person who hasn't got the capacity to incorporate and deal with my energy, and I can actually verbalise that, you know, that I recognise that for some people I'm too much. And I used to say, well, that's your problem, not mine. But now I'm thinking, well, you know, it's both our problems, because if I'm too much for you, you can't accommodate me in your life. So therefore we are a bit disconnected. So how can we move to where it's a win-win for both of us? You know, in that way that if this relationship is important, I'm willing to do that. And it's interesting because I don't want to tone myself down so that I don't ruffle other people's feathers, and yet at the same time I want to be true to myself. You know, I don't want to have to dim myself down just because maybe I'm too bright. But I can also recognise that for some people, my energy is triggering, you know, things that I say, things that I do. And in the past, you know, that was like a green light for me to have a bit more fun, if you like, if upsetting people is fun. And that can slip out of me at sometimes. You know, I was raised in that sort of environment where if somebody was like showing some signs of distress, we'd go in even more, you know. God. And I love my family, I really do, and I love my family traits, you know, the stuff that I've evolved in myself from the sort of like the healthy parts of my family. And for goodness sake, you know, a bit of teasing is, but when somebody's upset with being teased, I can recognise now that that's not great, because, you know, they're upset and I have the wherewithal to stop that, you know. So if this is making sense, great, and if it's not making sense, that's great too. But getting back to this, like being connected to everybody, the one that really did make it feel really real to me is that when I do harm to another person, and everybody's level of what harm is different, it's like I'm harming myself. And as I've got older, my accommodation for harming myself has got significantly less. I'm not willing anymore, just not willing to put myself through the guilt mill, through the you shouldn't have done that mill, those kinds of things. And yet I've had to get more canny in knowing what's okay for me isn't always okay for the other person too. So you can see how it's not all cut and dried. There's a lot of explore to do around it. So if you know, like, we're always clearing up our side of the street, because we do and say things that are unconscious a lot of the time. Bringing awareness to that is the first step. You know, what is it that I do that keeps on recreating this outcome where it doesn't work? Because if it's not working for the other person, then it sure as heck isn't working for us. And there's things to do around that. You know, how do we get to meet people halfway with what their wants are and what my wants are, without me, historically I was bullheaded and just, you know, well, if you have a problem with me, that's your problem. I don't have that now. If you've got a problem with me, then we need a conversation to see if we can sort something out. And if we can't, that's fine, because it's like where it's at. But this is like conscious relationships, and this is where, for me, where the healing comes for the blinking planet, if I'm truthful. How do we get along? How do we accommodate people who have very different points of view, very different ways of living? How do we accommodate? And I've only just recently, in the last 6 months, explored the difference between accommodation and toleration and acceptance. And there is a lot if you want to explore those differences. Toleration is toleration is just toleration. It's like you're putting up with something, you don't really like it, but you're putting up with it. And there's resentment there. It's not cut and dried. Toleration for me is something that I wouldn't want to do. I'm sure I do it. do it. And accommodation feels much, you know, I don't agree with it, I don't like it, and I can accommodate it. And then acceptance is where it feels a lot clearer. And accommodation for me is the step before we get toleration, then accommodation, then acceptance. So if you're interested in how to accommodate and how to be with other people who you disagree with, there's a load of work I've done on myself to get to that space. And I'm still working on it, you know, how to be with somebody who isn't even tolerating me, you know, or accommodating me. And it is an interesting explore. Because I am connected to them and they are connected to me, whether we like it or not. Everything that we do on the planet has an effect on something. our very movement, our very mingling with people, the energy that we give off. And it's surprising because you can't always read correctly. This is what I'm experiencing. People's energy, you can't correctly read or make a correct perception about the way somebody actually looks and moves. It isn't until I engage with somebody and ask some questions. But the amount of assumptions that we make in the flash, the blink of an eye is like profound. If we're not doing, there's some sensory perceptions inside us that's doing it for us. You know, the old memories. So even though a room of people, if you were to walk into a room of people, in a flash you would be able to discern who's happy, who's sad, who's safe, who's not, who, some part of you would be able to, with perhaps more self-awareness, tune into those people and their frequencies, their energies. But going by looks alone, I've noticed, is totally not the best way to make an assumption about somebody and who they are and what they're going to be like if you were to have a conversation with them. It's fascinating. I love this. This is sort of my realm. Relationships with people and getting to know more about myself through the relating of other people. You know, and connecting with people. When I say hello, most people will reply back. If I have an energy of, and sometimes I can choose it, you know, and sometimes I'm not aware of the energy that I'm giving off, and people will say, hello, good to see you, and I think, gosh, I thought I was looking miserable today. But at some level, we tune into each other at that level. I'm sure we do it with animals, I'm sure we do it with plants, I'm sure we do it with our car even. You know, like appreciation and respect and yeah, that sort of genuine respect for the car that you sit in, that you flick a switch in it, you know, and you light switch in your house, you know. Have you noticed that some people have lots of problems in their lives and other people seem to have a smooth life? And have you ever wondered why that is? And you can see that people who have rolling problems in their life kind of create them. You kind of can get to see that, oh, they're cooking up another disaster. Or they're cooking up another love story. You know, it seems like some people have like this magical ability to have a smooth life. And believe that they have a smooth life as well. You know, sometimes I can see the chaos in mine and sometimes I can see the smoothness in mine, and I've looked at what's my energy like in those times, you know, as a way of exploring my connection to the inanimate as well as the animate, you know, the humans and animals and things. So something simple for you to ponder on. Good luck. This will go up on my YouTube channel. Some of my talks I'm going to pop onto my YouTube channel. So there's some meaty stuff on there. You know, if you're wanting to explore yourself as a human being and what we're capable of and the muddles that we get into, you know, hop onto my YouTube. It's under my name, so, and subscribe if you want to. And I will be, eventually I'll get to do some lives on there because I think it might be easier and develop a nice little community on there. So thanks for watching and thanks for listening. And if you got some little jewels out of that, great. And look, my sort of like my invitation would be, look for what connects you more than what disconnects you. Look for what's working in the world and less so what's not working, because we just get more of what we look for. It's so true, is that. So look for what you want. And if you catch yourself saying, I don't want, that's an interesting statement in itself, because then you can flip it around to the opposite of what I want is. And if I had my wish, everybody would, in relationships, would say to each other, this isn't working like this for me anymore, and this is what I'd love instead. And that simple sentence, as hard as it may be to say, because most of us struggle with I want, and so exploring what you want. I rambled off into another topic there, didn't I? Anyway, I love you and leave you, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye for now. Bye.